Good morning, all. Saturday, would you believe? And sad to say, I'm doing it so this week because my little friend joined Kalbarri. And if you had a look at our Facebook page, he actually claimed he caught a fish. In fact, he caught two fish. But I think we'll have to get him next week and just get the real truth, whether he did it or did he borrow it from the fisherman next door. But huge things going on in WA as far as property is concerned. In fact, WA as a whole, I travelled on the highway during the week between Perth and Geraldton, and there was no shortage of traffic. More particularly, there's no shortage of traffic with caravans and trailers. So WA is perhaps bucking the trend a little bit. It's plenty happening. But, of course, there's been some other interesting news this week, obviously, with the budget, both the federal budget and the state budget. I'm not going to go into that this week only because of the fact that there's perhaps been plenty said. And I've got a couple of guests coming up in the next week or two, and we'll look into that a little bit more as to what impact that's going to have on the property side of things. Certainly, there's been no shortage of commentary about the job keeper and the job seeker and what impact that's having and what that's going to have on the property market. Some of the statistics that I've seen during the week suggest that WA in particular is use that word, that phrase regularly, bucking the trend. We're looking at more growth than the rest of the country. And when I say growth, I mean particularly as far as the property market is concerned. And in some quarters, the way things are being conveyed, it's just about, I suppose it's just about indicating that we're heading towards a bit of a boom between 2021 when it comes to property. And certainly, as we've been saying for several weeks now, the rental market is just crazy. It is really intriguing. In fact, this week I caught up with a property manager in Perth, Bree from M&M Property, and we have a chat about a few things, and just with pretty much the same story that everyone's telling me that they're involved. 30, 40 people rocking up to apply for a rental. And so those stories are not changing. And you'll see a lot of statistics around a lot of the papers. See Damien Collins, the president of REWA. There's been an increase in our state migration. I think it's something like 1.5%, which is getting back to what it once was. It dropped way below that. I think it was down to about 0.06% at one stage. So there's an influx of people. There's people deciding to come back to WA. There's ex-West Australians coming back to WA. And there is also a statistic somewhere with the interest being shown by eastern states. And I know personally, as far as our inquiries that we're receiving from eastern states people, and hence what we want to talk about. So some of the things this week is, I've already made mention about a few stats, but there's one particular stat that I wouldn't mind showing you shortly more particularly about capital cities, the comparisons between Perth and the rest of the country. Actually, buying a home, a unit or a townhouse, and you'll see there was a lot of questions that we put on our intro this week, because I think I've certainly had people inquiring with me as to a whole range of different questions that people have got. So I'm not suggesting we know it all. I'm not suggesting that we are experts with everything, but we like to think we've got a fair knowledge with 40-odd years of experience in finance and property. We'd like to think that we've got something to be able to do. And that's the purpose of this whole Property Avenue WA. We've got massive exposure in that field, in the property market, and, of course, my own experience. And that's why we're doing it, the focus on WA. And again, we look at things during the week, and some of the articles and some of the stats that we read, it was New South Wales, it was Victoria, it was Queensland. Where was WA? And we're doing really well, as the Premier and many of the others are suggesting. So we're going to do that about buying a house. and it's more the thoughts on as far as a conveyance is concerned. When we get a contract, it's pretty much too late. If we identify things, you give us a contract to then proceed to go to settlement, and we pick up issues, or you raise issues that's been on the contract and it's already been signed off. It's game, set, and match. Sorry. So we're going to go through a few of those things, special conditions in particular. What's really been interesting this week, although I won't go into great detail, but the mum and dad bank, I was staggered. I knew, I've experienced it firsthand with a few clients, as mum and dad providing funding for the kids and their first home or their second home or whatever the case may be. But you'll be interested. It's really, I'll come across that. And something that's really close to my heart that I've been doing, as you'll see, people look at my nails, but it's the polish man. And I'll quickly tell you what polish man is about shortly. There'll be no if question this week because I'm running solo, so I can't ask myself that question. So we'll see how we go. So so with regard to what's going on, as I've already mentioned, the budget has been a big focus this week, and understandably so. There has been some real pluses with regard to that budget, perhaps, and what that does to property in WA, and some of the things that stimulus that the state government's going to do here in WA. I feel personally that that's going to be a huge boost to what we're going to achieve in the coming months. Something that's really I was a little surprised about, and maybe that's still to come. Perhaps they don't need that to be a budget issue, but I thought there may have been an extension of the building grants, because I'm sure I read, and I tried to rush around this morning, had a bit on this morning, and I was trying to find where I read, where I'm sure I saw a stat somewhere, or that's something like 300 building applications have been back because the builders can't believe they can satisfy them within the time frame with regard to the stimulus package. So if you're building, if that's your plan, I would be ensuring that I clarify very clearly with the builder where we're at time frame, because it's all very nice to get something that we've been raising for a while. It's all very nice to get all this business in the door, but it's pretty important that you can satisfy, because I'm sure there's a lot of you are doing it because of the fact that there's in this package, and as first-time buyers, it's more. So it's something that I would follow up on and ensure that your timeframes are going to be okay, because at the present time, and I know the building industry, I've read the building industry are really, but it's something that I would be really concerned about, because we raised it last week with Jordan Ralph actually, as to finance, because if you're buying a property and you're taking into consideration your $45,000 as part of your budget to build a property, you're really sure that we're going to satisfy timeframes and the requirements under the stimulus package. So watch this space, and certainly keep in touch with your builder or whoever it is that you're liaising with when it comes. I think it could be a really important with regard to your building plans. The other thing that just reminds me too, that we Jordan Ralph on, and Jordan, I really do apologise. In fact, I apologise to those. We have got a link. We will ensure that we give you a link regarding checking your credit rating. A really interesting observation and comments with credit rating. And look, not all of us, some of it's done by mistake, and suddenly it hits the bad spot. So keep an eye on that. We'll post that on our Property Avenue WA and also Facebook page. So look for that link. I'll make sure I do that today at some point, and ensure that if you want to have a look at that and just see where everything's tickety-boo, particularly if you're going to intend to borrow money to buy a home, and you don't want any surprise and go, hang on, I didn't know anything about that. So here's an opportunity to have a look at that. So I'll ensure that link is on our page. Promise. The other thing that we we'll look at is, is that when I talk about the rental market, I'm really intrigued as to what's going on. And I spoke to a friend of mine yesterday, and what is going on when we talk about rentals, and we talk about long-term rentals, 6 months, 12 months, and people doing those sort of things. But it was also interesting where short-term. So a friend of mine yesterday, as I said, she decided to do Airbnb, and has been inundated, absolutely inundated, totally booked out. Got a property which is a great little property, and so if you've got something along those lines, do it right. But there's opportunity. So if you've even to the point that something very basic, but people are looking for accommodation. I know a friend of mine came up to Geraldton business. Left last minute, thought, well, I'll sort out accommodation, and couldn't get accommodation. So it is important. It is difficult. You probably need to start looking. Don't expect to rock up and get accommodation, but there are Airbnb opportunities out there, and it's really interesting to see what people are doing. Okay, buying a home, buying a unit, buying a townhouse property, that's my field. I am a settlement agent. We've had a settlement agency for some years. Here in Geraldton, because the office is located in Geraldton, doesn't mean you can't get our services, because we do a lot of work statewide. It's a bit like the banking system. Our Geraldton office is really our processing centre, and I'm very, very, and I don't say that. I say that very, very genuinely, that I've got 3 amazing young ladies who look after and make things happen. My manager, Erin Ward, is as good as you'll get. So you're always welcome to give us a call. But it's not about, as I say, this not about, but it's about trying to assist you. So where I'm coming from as far as the conveyancing side and buying a property, in WA, and I say this on the basis that there's so many people from interstate that are inquiring, it is very different to what occurs over in the East Coast as far as buying property here in WA. And what I mean by that is there is no cooling off period like there is over the East Coast. You can't gazump, as they call it, over there with regard to it. You put it over there, you can gazump. Over here, you cannot. So it's a case of putting in an offer in writing. You go through a real estate agent, or there's no shortage. I've had a number of contracts assisting people with private contracts where people are selling, people are buying privately. That's still happening here in WA, but you put the contract in writing. You present your offer to a seller via the agent, or as I say, if you're doing it privately, you can do it via someone like myself, or you can do it directly with the seller. And when you present that offer, the seller then, it's a case of accepting that offer. So the seller signs the offer off after you've presented your offer. Now, that offer is not just about what you're buying, how much you're offering to buy the property for, but that offer also must include any conditions that you want with regard to that property. So if you're going out this weekend to have a look at a property, or if you're going to go on a website and look at a property, if you're over the East Coast and you can't get to WA and you're going to do it by virtual checking it out, I would strongly recommend that you try and find someone who can help you with that. Certainly the agent, I don't deny the agent's there to help you, but the agent also acts for the seller. They're paid by the seller over here in WA in majority cases. You can employ a real estate agent who will work for you as the buyer's agent, and that's something you'll need to look for and clarify that with the agent if you're at Eastern Coast, but you will pay for that. Like everything, there's no free lunches, unfortunately. So if you're buying here in WA, getting back to that, then you will put an offer in, but you must consider the conditions. Those special conditions, the things that we see as a settlement agency, I always emphasise be specific. And when I do a private sale, when I say a private sale, when I attend to a private contract for clients, if I'm sitting there with the buyers and the sellers, one of the things that one of my favourite little phrases is cater for the what if. All right. So what I'm saying is, if you see or you've gone through a property, don't just assume. If there are things there that you want addressed, and everyone says, no, we'll get all those fixed, don't you worry about a thing. Please, 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 if nothing else, have it included in the contract. Put it in writing as a special condition. It's really important as far as that's concerned. Now, those conditions can be whatever morning, Laura. I just got a lovely message from one of our regular followers, and she came in to see me in the office and I wasn't here. Sorry, Laura. So getting back to, I digress. So getting back to your special condition, if you be specific, it's really important that you do that. And so there's a range of things there. Termite is standard, and you really, here in WA, it's a must, absolute must. So a termite inspection report. That is paid for by the buyer, and the reason why that's paid for by the buyer is because then if there's any issues, the termite company is responsible to you. That is why. It is a fact. So you turn around and say, well, hang on, what is the seller? Well, the seller then, the termite company is answerable to the seller. If you've got a problem, it's not the termite company's problem as far as you're concerned, because you're not his, he's not the agent for you. He's the agent for the seller. So the buyer caters for that. Just ensure, sometimes I find the time frames, particularly in a busy market like we're experiencing here in WA at the moment, just ensure you have frames for that condition. So what I'm talking about is giving sufficient time for the termite company to do the report or do the inspection and then do the report. Sometimes I find the time frames are just too minimal, and it puts a lot of pressure on everybody. Particularly consider the termite company. They are busy people. So consider those people and consider what is going on with regard to your time frames so everything can be satisfied, because those time frames have been exhausted and there's any problems that arise from that report, the situation as the buyer where you've got no claim because the time frames have been exhausted. So time frames are really important in your contract. Talking about time frames, the other clause, and I know Jordan, I know Dean Stonehouse, when we had Dino on recently as a finance broker, time frames with regard to your finance. At this point in time, we are pulling our hair out. Poor Erin yesterday was on the phone for one of the banks for an hour and a half on hold waiting to get through. Yes, I mean it, an hour and a half, and we cannot do anything about it, I'm sorry to say. You wonder why I'm grey. The situation is that with your time frame, I would suggest, and we confirmed this with Jordan and Dino recently, I would suggest when it comes to finance, even though you've been indicated that it should be fine, do the information I got from bankers when I inquired with a range of 2 days. Now, I know when it comes to the seller, you're saying, what? That's 6 weeks. Yes, I know. But what I'm suggesting is if it only takes 4 weeks, then when it comes to your settlement date, don't have a date, but have 30 days from finance approval. So what that means is we have finance approval, but if settlement is 20 days or 20 days, if finance is approved in, say, 20 days, then settlement is 30 days from the 20 days, if that makes sense. And the why I say 30 days is because most lending institutions want a minimum of 28 to 30 days before they're ready to go to settlement. And at the moment, sometimes that's not even happening. Now, I still do work anywhere in WA. Some of the lending institutions do all done overseas. So there's time associated with all that. So getting back to reviewing what I'm just saying, the situation is when it comes to time frames, I would recommend 42 days for finance approval, and I would recommend settlement time to be on or before. Don't do on or before, because unless you're going to be specific, do 30 days from finance approval, and then you can then work from there once this thing goes. So that's your finance. The other thing that was highlighted by the guys the other day with regard to finance, be specific as to your lender. if you go lender of your choice or to be advised, the issue you've got there is if you do not get finance approval from the lender that you go to, and then you go, I can't get finance from Westpac or can't get finance from West or where. The issue there is you've then got to find another lender. Now, that lender might be a higher rate. It might not suit you with regard to it. But the fact being is if you specify your lender on the contract, that is the lender that you are committed to. You can change your mind. Don't get me wrong. But protect you. I'm talking as a buyer, not as a seller. I know that's not everything. That's not what the seller wants to hear. But we've got to be fair to all parties here. In this case, I'm talking about a buyer. So I'm talking about first home buyers. I'm talking about second home buyers. I don't care who you are. Even though you've been given clearance that you'll no problems, you will get finance, until it's in writing, it's not approved. And that's why I'm saying, be specific. There, settlement situations as far as timeframes. Then we get back to special conditions. Conditions are really important. And I say that because they are things that are protecting you as a buyer. And in fact, special conditions also can protect the seller. We've just put a private contract together and this week for some clients, and the buyers and sellers, one of the advantages of a private sale is the buyers and sellers are talking to each other directly. So that's a plus. No disrespect to the real estate fraternity, no disrespect to people's choice. Enjoy that scenario. People are comfortable with that scenario. What I see as an advantage is the buyers and sellers is talking directly. And in this case that I've put a contract together this week, there are going to be some items, furniture items, etc., that are going to be retained. The seller is happy to leave those items with as part of the purchase. But with that, we need to be specific as to identifying that has been agreed to. Don't just assume it and then rock up and say, oh, hang on, you're going to leave all that stuff. And he hasn't. So that's why we're saying cater for the what if. Put that in the contract. And if you want to hammer that, we're only a phone call away, only an email away. Or you may have a settlement agent of your choice. I would strongly recommend that you speak to them and get their opinion, get them to help you, even if you want someone to help you to draft that condition. So that's where I mean about being specific. One of the other things that we're finding a fair bit of late is, not of late, been for a while, but a building inspection has become a regular condition, special condition that's put on a contract. A building contract is a building contract or building inspection report is fine. But what is occurring with that is the majority of building inspection reports are structural. And therefore, if the building report comes back and says property is structurally sound, that condition has been satisfied. However, where we get some grief and some pain, and it's quite difficult when we get the buyers then contacting us, is that when the builder does the building report, they identify a range of maintenance issues. Unless there's been specific in the contract, once again, that word specific, unless it's been specified in the contract that those maintenance issues don't need to be addressed. If they are not impacting on structure, they are clearing the scenario. Build a surveyor on regard to that is one of the best. But settlement's concerned, now subject to lawyer, but as far as that's concerned, if you haven't specified in that contract that there are no there's nothing about maintenance, then you've got no comeback on the seller. You're going to do a building report, fine, do a building report for structural, but also perhaps include a condition associated with maintenance matters and identify those. And again, be specific. What are we talking about? The seller has the right to not accept those conditions. Okay, so be aware as a buyer, you might have all the conditions you want, but the seller also has the right to decline those conditions. but the seller can also include conditions. So the seller might decide that, well, you're buying the property as is. The price is being discounted, if you like, on the basis that you're buying as you see it. So that doesn't occur. So as I say, with regard to the building, be assured when you do the building report, be very, very clear as to what you're doing as far as that's concerned. I would also recommend that you do a special condition when it comes to plumbing and electrical. Now, plumbing and electrical, you can do one of two things. You can have a plumbing and electrical special condition that's specific as to when I go in and do my pre-settlement inspection, everything's got to be working order. Because I experienced it, where you go in, everything's going 5 days before settlement, hot water system breaks down. A bit like a light globe. You really don't know when it's going to break down. You don't know when that light globe is going to go pop. So we've also experienced it where the hot water system breaks down 3 days after someone's moved into their new property, and they ring up and say, oh, they must have known. No, sadly, more often than not, no. Probably don't know. It's probably something worth checking, making sure the hot water system's okay when you do your inspection. But unless the contract, there's not much you can do about it. All right. So you need to be careful of those things. So you're going to do a condition about plumbing, electrical, but you can do also a condition where you want a electrical inspection done, termite inspection, and you can plumbing inspection. I'd probably more inclined to consider that if you're buying an older property and ensuring that everything is tickety-boo when it comes to the electrical side, or you can just do a general condition. So there are some of the things that you need that I would recommend you be specific about. There's a range of other conditions that you can include in the contract. One of the other things that I would certainly consider in this market, where it's a busy market, if you're a seller, you have the option of having what they call trade out clause. Now, that is a condition. So I'm buying your property, but I'm buying your property subject to the sale, and this is important, not just the sale of your property, but the sale and settlement of my property. So I'm buying your home, and I'm buying it subject to my home. Ensure when you sign that contract and present that contract to the seller, ensure that that contract specifies that settlement or the purchase of this property is subject to the sale and property. Really, really important. It's so important because we've had dramas where someone's property hasn't settled, but it's been sold, and settlement is a different time frame to the settlement of the property I'm buying. And I've got a time frame when I've got to settle for the property I'm buying. If they don't link up, you've got a problem. Disastrous. And I think we raised last week too about if you're buying a property with a rental in it, and I've had that situation as well in recent times. Quite a drama where the tenant is in, there's a lease in place, and it wasn't identified about vacant possession. And settlement can't proceed. Settlement can proceed, but you can't move in while the tenant's there. So what do? Probably get legal advice for starters, but generally once that lease is there and it hasn't been addressed, then quite honestly, if you're going to sell your property and you've got a tenant in there, firstly, you need to make your tenant aware that what you're doing, and perhaps don't just assume that the person is going to buy it for investment purposes and you'll be okay, Mr. Tenant. I'll let you stay in there. Maybe the buyer is out again, but maybe the buyer has a paint job, do a few renovations before he then puts it out there in the marketplace. So again, I use that word, don't assume, cater for the what if, be specific. They're the things that you need to be really conscious of when you're buying a property. So all I can say is, look, utilize don't hesitate to ask. And again, please don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that a real estate agent is not looking after you. I'm not suggesting that at all. All I'm saying is just sometimes another set of eyes may help you with regard to what you're doing, because don't forget, you're the one who's spending the money. And be it the seller or be it the buyer, it just may help, because when we get it, as I say, when I say we, be it the lawyer or the conveyancer who's doing your settlement, that contract signed, sealed and delivered. So it's really important. So guys, there's no cooling off. The 48-hour clause, by the way, I digressed again. The 48-hour clause is an option. So that 48-hour clause is, so I'm buying your property subject to the sale and settlement of my property. The 48-hour clause, the opportunity to then, if someone came in with a cash offer, and let's say it was a few weeks down the track and nothing's sort of been happening, and you think, you know what, I really need to sell this because I want to do something else, then that's when the 48-hour clause comes in. Specified in the contract, but what it does, it allows me, the buyer, to make a decision. I can make the contract unconditional, and perhaps if you are subject to sale and settlement of your property, it may not be a bad idea to go to your broker and speak to them about catering finance as a subject to the sale of your property. Because why I say that is that if another offer comes on the property that you've got your heart set on, what that does is that if that 48-hour clause comes into play, and it doesn't have to be 48 hours, you can as a buyer or a seller and say, okay, well, it might be 7 days, right? But they call it the 48-hour clause because that's pretty much a standard condition. But it's like everything. Conditions can be adjusted to suit both parties and to suit your circumstances. So don't just accept the fact that, oh, no, you can't do that. Yes, you can do that, as long as it's in writing and as long as it's specific and as long as it's doing what it needs to do for both parties and it's agreeable to both seller and buyer. Simple as that. And if there's any difficulties with regard to having that done, then all you need to do is to contact someone like myself, and we can help you with that, or a lawyer to help that, okay? If we consider it where you need legal advice, we won't hesitate in directing you that, because we're not lawyers. We like to think we know everything, but we're not lawyers. So that's a couple of things that you need to be consider with regard to when you're buying. So we'll go over them. Be really specific with your time frame as far as settlement's concerned. Link up settlement time frame together with your finance approval. Finance approval, we're suggesting 42 days. When it comes to settlement, 30 days from finance approval is pretty much a standard process. Anything outside that, any differences, again, contact someone like myself with regard to that sort of information. When it comes to special conditions, be specific, all right? Don't assume, don't just take someone's word for it, etc. And I'm not suggesting there's dishonest buyers and sellers. Some people will try and pull the wool. This is the real world, but in 99% of the cases, it's not about that. But even so, you've got to be specific to cater for the what if. Building inspection report. Ensure the building inspection report you want. Ensure, is it a building inspection report just because you want to check the structures, the extensions, you want to make sure if you start doing those extensions, the structures are okay for what you want. Do a building report, but perhaps have a condition there, the building report, and reference the building report about some maintenance issues if they're identified within the building report. Okay, so consider that. Do a special condition with regard to plumbing and electrical. There's nothing stopping you from also getting a specific report. So getting a plumber, getting an electrician to do an inspection on a report. I wouldn't do this for every property. I think if it's a relatively new property, it's probably not necessary. But it's personal choice. It's what you've observed and what you feel when you go to buy a property. So consider those things. And the other thing being is that if you're buying a property and it's subject to the sale of your property, remember to include and have a condition on that contract that this purchase of this property is subject to the sale and settlement of the property that you currently own. All right, really, really important. And then, of course, there's the 48-hour clause. As I said, that 48-hour clause is what we refer to it as, but there's nothing stopping you, as long as agreed between the buyer and the seller, to have that time frame extended. Could be 7 days, could be 2 weeks, which is giving you time. If you're waiting, as I say, we go back to buying and selling to cater for, say, the fallback position. I've got funds in place. Away we go. And it might be something you can still look. I still want to see what you can do. Okay, I think really, really important. I think we've covered a few of those. There's lots and lots of things that can be covered when it comes to buying a house. When you go in, if you're going in this weekend and having a look at a property, have a look around, look at the fencing, make sure everything's tickety-boo there, have a look around the house, ensure, go walk around the house and have a look at the guttering. Not just a case of how good it looks, but ensure that the things that you are going to be important to you. Don't forget, this is your home that you're buying. And they're the sort of things that you need to consider. So have a good look around, have a check, see what's going on with the street around you. Is it busy? Might look great now, and then suddenly come 8 o'clock in the morning, the traffic is chaotic and you've got buses and trains and whatever else in the area. That might suit you, but just ensure that it's all everything that are going to be what you want, because this is what you're investment, you're outlaying money to do. Consider. So that are the things as far as the thing I did say to you, I was going to show you this stat, which I found really, really interesting, and I'll put this up on the screen. But this was the capital cities at a glance that we noticed during the week, and it's giving an indication of what what they are expecting. As far as growth is concerned over the coming period. And very interesting is the fact that they are seeing the house prices, the growth in Perth. Now, this is the capital city, so don't get me wrong, this is about WA. It's not about any specific area. And yes, I'm up in Geraldton at the moment, but it's not a Geraldton show. It's about WA, but Perth obviously being our major city. It identifies, and I think this would have a bit of a flow-on effect to it. Would be mine. We'll talk to Oscar next week. He just sent me a message. He's on the road, folks. He's heading away from his fishing town of Kalbarri, and he's heading back to the big smoke. So travel safe, big fella. So this, as you can see, Sydney, they're suggesting there'll be a drop of a minus of 1.2. Melbourne is also a drop. But this is why we do property in WA. We're focusing on 5.5, and then Darwin is 6.6. So you can see that in this little slot here that WA is looking, and Perth in particular, is looking pretty good as far as the market's concerned. Now, I warn everybody, and I'm sure just be aware that things can change very quickly. And don't forget, we're dealing with a virus here that is, who knows? There's some people have the opinion that, when you compare what we've had in Australia and compared to and a percentage of our population, we've been damn lucky, and it's really not that big an issue. And perhaps I personally feel as though it's probably got to a point where it will get to a point where I think we've just got to learn to live with it and be a little bit smart how we go about it. But in the meantime, as far as WA is concerned, we're going gangbusters, and we need to keep it that way. The other thing that I was really intrigued about is I talked about Mum and Dad Bank. Mum and Dad Bank is, would you believe, is ranked. We've got the big four, Commonwealth National, Bankwest, and Westpac, of course. But then, would you believe, number 5 is Mum and Dad Bank. Yep, true story. Mum and Dad Bank. So mums and dads who are providing funding, be it part of their retirement monies or be it their little slush fund they may have, or they've sold a property and going to help their kids, whatever way they may be, they are ranked number 5. And I'll get you those statistics next week when we get OD on board. But I found that really, really interesting, And it's not just not little penny. It's a big number. So that's to all those mums and dads out there. But it's an important part. And what I will say, I was a lawyer this week having a chat, and he highlighted that he, in fact, ironically, had a client in that day, and of course, we didn't discuss names, confidentiality, but in the general scheme of things, I was actually talking to him about the mum and dad bank situation. It's really important. I know it's your kids, etc., but you still got to cater for the what if, right? I know in the most cases, I'm no different. We want to look after our kids as much as we can, and we do what we do. But there are some scenarios you need to be careful. We will get going, and we'll talk about that again as a guest in the coming week. But I thought that was a really interesting statistic. And the other thing that I really wanted to talk about it as well quickly, because we want to come to an end, is I thought I'd let you know this is really interesting. So I do the Polished Man. Okay, Polished Man, for those that aren't aware, Polished Man is not I don't think it's a well-known campaign or charity here in WA. Certainly over the East Coast it is. But there it is. Here it is, folks. 1 billion children experienced violence in the last year alone. That's worldwide. That is just terribly sad, and I'm lucky enough to have 5 grandchildren. Children should be protected like no one else. They are our future. They are our future leaders. But sadly, it happens. Have a look at the Facebook page. It's something that I'm passionate about. So me walking around, my granddaughter Sophia, she did my nails for me before I came up to Geraldton this week, and she's very proud of them. So I'll get my other kids to do them as we go. But so the situation is that Polished Man believe in a world where no child suffers to be a child. This is part of it's a talking point. So if you wonder why that weird bloke's got his nails painted, or at least 2 of them painted, it's just to create conversation, make an awareness of care of our kids. Our little children are precious, and we need to consider that. Folks, that's it. I'm going to give it short and sweet. I'm probably a bit longer than I was planning. But to all of you, thank you for supporting Property Avenue WA. We've got some great guests coming up. We will definitely speak to Oscar next week. We will discuss not only property, but I think we might check with him about, I don't know whether I really want to ask him how he caught those fish, because it could go on forever. But for those that are on holidays, those that are travelling, please travel safe. If you're buying property this weekend or any time soon, or selling for that matter, you're always welcome to send us a message via our Facebook page. So you've got Property Avenue WA and also Champion Bay Settlements. Excuse me. Or you're always welcome to give us a call. I'm available after hours. But if you are buying, talk to your settlement agent. Be aware of when you do, and when you make a decision, be specific in your contract. There's opportunities galore. There's some really good articles that I would like to cover, and we'll look at those probably next week. But enjoy your week. Please travel safe if you're traveling, and fabulous to see you. Look forward to seeing you next week. And well, what more can we do? It's spring. Enjoy and go the Cats.